Welcome to PatsCast. Joint practices are officially over for the New England Patriots. They just wrapped up day 2 with the Minnesota Vikings a couple days before their second preseason game. This will be their final joint practice and real competitive opportunity with some of the best players on the field for both teams, although Justin Jefferson was not out there today for the Vikings. And I said after day 1, which was basically a draw, most of the Boston sports media actually said the Patriots were better than the Vikings on the first day of joint practices, but gives the players, coaches, 16 hours to go back, look at the tape, correct their mistakes, and see who's the better team on day 2. And perhaps not surprisingly, with Kevin O'Connell, one of the best offensive minds in the NFL, and Brian Flores, one of the best defensive minds in the NFL, the Vikings were able to correct their mistakes more than the Patriots on day 2. And it started off pretty well for the Pats today. And I work a full-time big boy job, 9 to 5, often more. So I'm checking throughout the day just to see, how the Patriots are doing. And they absolutely dominated, particularly the receivers, in 7-on-7s and 1-on-1s in the early portion of practice. Went to a couple meetings, came out, and then reality set in for the Patriots. So full pads, red zone, heavy day. Patriots once again with their young offense going up against Brian Flores' second in DVOA last year, Minnesota Vikings defense. And the Patriots, once it came to 11-on-11s, they really struggled. And it happened on both sides of the football. Both fields, you have two fields going at the same time with the Vikings offense, the Patriots defense, and vice versa on the other field. And Minnesota basically dominated when it came to the full team periods today. That doesn't mean there weren't some bright spots, particularly in 7-on-7s. And I have to say, Drake Maye, not just today, both of these joint practices, has looked pretty good. The issue is when he has people blocking in front of him and defensive linemen rushing toward him. Yeah, he did what he could, but there isn't a lot you can do against this complex defense when your offensive line can't block. And unfortunately today, pretty much everyone could not block against Minnesota's defense. So once again, Maye was poised out there. Second straight day without throwing a pick to the Minnesota Vikings defense. You can't say the same about J.J. McCarthy, who did have a good day, but had a bad pick 6 interception to Marcus Jones yesterday. Drake Maye, close to perfect for most of training camp, really has struggled. He struggled in the preseason game with the strip sack fumble, had a couple of interceptions in the Friday practice in Gillette, open to the fans, but really, I think he's thrown maybe one more interception outside of that throughout all of training camp. There's been some close calls. There was a close call yesterday against the Vikings, but with all the negatives coming out of today's practice, which I'm going to get to in a second, Drake Maye is getting rid of the football. He's taking sacks when he has to. He is going through the progression, taking the short passes, but more importantly, and this is different in Josh McDaniels' offense, there have been plenty of explosive plays. There were a few more in day 1, but plenty to talk about today, including a 40-yard Hail Mary touchdown pass to Kayshon Boutte, which basically saved the Patriots in their 2-minute drill situation, coming off of a flag from Will Campbell on the previous play, which pushed them back. But 10 of 14 passing, 3 touchdowns in red zone drills, that's about as good as you can ask for. Now, the negatives, of course, during those 11-on-11 red zone drills, Drake Maye took 5 sacks. Now, he had some good throws, 2 touchdowns to Hunter Henry, but both of those plays could be chalked up as sacks. Now, maybe Maye gets the ball off in time in a real game and gets the ball to Henry, but hard to tell in these preseason joint practices. But Maye, very efficient in the red zone when he was able to get the ball out. Also went 7 of 8 with 4 touchdown passes in the 7-on-7 period. So just Drake Maye out there with the running backs and the receivers. Did an excellent job. Overall throughout camp, if my numbers are correct, Drake Maye has completed 106 passes on 171 attempts, 3 interceptions, as I mentioned. But of course, the big drawback is he's had about 30 sacks throughout all of training camp, and 5 of those came from today alone against the Minnesota Vikings. So solid completion rate, not turning the football over, very poised, taking command of the Josh McDaniels offense, out there changing protections a lot more today than he did on the first day. That's something that Maye said after the first joint practice with the Vikings, leaning on those short throws, but under heavy pressure throughout the entire day. And that's been the story of Drake Maye's career, right? I mean, he was under pressure a ton as a rookie, didn't have a great offensive line at the University of North Carolina, so he's used to that stuff. But at a certain point, you got to get the blocking down and give Drake Maye some time so we can see who he really is. And even today, which I would not say was a great practice from the Patriots, I think it was a pretty good practice for Drake Maye. So we'll start with a little positive note there. Again, 2 touchdown passes to Hunter Henry where he probably was sacked on both of those plays. One to Austin Hooper, hit Stephon Diggs. The clips on X for a 15-yard touchdown and 7-on-7s. Demario Douglas for a 5-yard touchdown. Travion Henderson had a touchdown reception, and same with Kayshon Boutte, all during the 7-on-7 periods. But really, Maye kind of had to lean on his tight ends during those red zone periods. And then when they got pushed back and he had a little bit more field to work with, hit Kayshon Boutte on a last-second Hail Mary. That kind of saved the team and ended things on a positive note when there was a lot of negativity throughout, 90% of the 11-on-11 periods. Kind of the opposite of what happened yesterday. They had a big flashy play, and then Mike Vrabel was going to call the starting unit off the field for the rest of practice, but Vrabel, doing what he often does, said, no, they need to make a few more mistakes, and they did make plenty in the series that they did at the end of practice on day 1. So Mike Vrabel is okay with the mistakes as long as they don't repeat these mistakes, although there were plenty of repeated mistakes today, particularly with Will Campbell, which I'll get to in a second. But there's a lot of psychology there from Mike Vrabel and just building this team up, giving them plenty of film to learn from, and hopefully they'll continue to get better and better. But this trip to Minnesota, we knew it was going to be tough. Patriots going on the road, facing perhaps the most complex defense that they're going to see all season long. The O-line, of course, struggled, but I think Drake Maye did pass the test, even though he was sacked 5 times in 11-on-11s, but there's only so much you can do. And I appreciate him taking the sacks instead of turning the football over. Did make some mistakes out there. He missed Demario Douglas on a big gain. Now, I think that was partly Douglas's fault. He turned a little early on his route. So still some chemistry issues there that we saw last season with Maye and Douglas. Maye also just went 1 of 3 in the final 2 periods. Just a short completion to Travion Henderson during that portion. And of course there was the Hail Mary. So I guess 2 of 4. There's the Hail Mary after the Will Campbell false start. But again, Maye showed poise. He avoided turnovers for the second straight day. Mike Vrabel said after practice that we were glad we didn't see him go in a blender. He was able to process very quickly. Still needs to improve on the pre-snap adjustments, but it was a little bit better today than it was yesterday. Josh Dobbs actually didn't have a bad day in 11-on-11s. Of course, he's going up against backups with backups of his own. 11 of 18 passing, 5 touchdowns in 11-on-11s, including a really spectacular 20-yard touchdown to Efton Chisholm, which really just came from the precise route running of Chisholm, who continues to make a case to make this team. Also had touchdowns to Kyle Williams. Javon Baker had a pretty decent practice, and Jack Westover had a touchdown as well. But let's get to the offensive line, because it's getting a little bit worrisome at this point. So the starting unit today was Will Campbell at left tackle, Ben Brown at left guard, and then Garrett Bradbury at center, Mike Onwenu at right guard, and Morgan Moses at right tackle. So where's Jared Wilson? That's the question. Why wasn't he out there today? We don't know. We don't. He was out there in warmups and then just left practice. So we don't know if this is an injury thing, if it's a demotion, because he struggled quite a bit with technique and kind of basic fundamental stuff, even though he's done very well throughout training camp, he struggled quite a bit in the last preseason game, struggled in the first day of joint practices. So could he have been demoted? I'm not sure. It could also just be workload management, which is kind of odd for a rookie, but considering all that they've asked of Jared Wilson throughout training camp, starting out at the center position, playing both center and left guard, finally seemingly permanent at left guard, or maybe they want him to get reps down the road at center, so they gave him a day off so he can take a stab at that in the preseason game. I don't know. Or he's hurt. But that's a bit of a concern, and we saw them really struggle today with Ben Brown out there at left guard. Now, I wouldn't say that was necessarily Ben Brown's fault. They basically just struggled as a unit altogether, and that starts with Will Campbell. Will Campbell beat Jonathan Grenard yesterday in one-on-ones, but he lost badly today. Gave up a pressure and 2 sacks in 11-on-11s, and then, of course, he had the false start in the 2-minute drill, which luckily set up the Kayshon Boutte Hail Mary from Drake Maye, but he's not the kind of guy you want taking penalties, and that really isn't his foray, so hopefully he can clean that up a little bit. Vrabel said some good plays today from Will Campbell, but some where he got beat inside, and that's really been the issue for Will Campbell, where he has had issues. For the most part, he's been very good throughout training camp. He was excellent in the preseason game, aside from the stunt that him and Wilson weren't able to pick up on the Drake Maye strip sack fumble, but he really struggles with the inside moves. Now, going up against his teammate Braden Swinson in one-on-ones when the Patriots first put on pads in training camp, his teammate at LSU, both are on the Patriots now. Wilson beat him early on in one-on-ones because he knows Will Campbell struggles with these inside moves. And then today, going up against Jonathan Grenard, who's one of the best defensive pass rushers in the NFL, of course, he goes to the inside move after a day of film and is able to beat Will Campbell, and that's really what happened to Will during the 11-on-11. So, kind of a rough day for Will Campbell, and he has to figure out how to correct for those inside moves. Now, is that an issue with his shoulder length or his arm length? I'm not sure. Is he just not quick on his feet? From everything we've seen, everything we've heard, Will Campbell is a fundamentally sound left tackle. So does this have to do with some of his physical limitations? And how is he going to correct for that? He's very good at that initial punch, which is how he's able to compensate for the lack of length that he has. But perhaps that's why players are able to kind of feed off of that, pretend they're going on the outside and making a counter move in the inside, and then Will Campbell gets beat pretty badly. That's something he struggled with in college. Didn't struggle with much in college, but that was the one weakness, and we've seen it surface quite a bit throughout training camp, and Minnesota, with one day of film, figured out how to beat him. So it's up to Will Campbell. I'm not worried about him long term, but in the short to medium term, he's got to figure this out, because that's, aside from quarterback, that is the most important position on the field. And if teams just say, all right, just rush on the inside of Will Campbell, and he gets beat every time, well, he's going to find himself at left guard very quickly. So, again, I'm not too worried about it, but this is something he's going to have to figure out very soon, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the preseason game after these two teams practice against each other. Is Will Campbell going to be able to compensate for that, or is he going to overcompensate and start getting beat on the outside? I mean, that's just how the offensive line works. It moves so quickly. Can he correct for it? Well, so far, he's struggled throughout training camp, at least with those inside moves, but overall, Will Campbell's been pretty good, but he did struggle yesterday, and he struggled even more today. Again, Jared Wilson not out there. We're not really sure why. He was replaced by Ben Brown at left guard. So Ben Brown not playing center, playing left guard, seems to be the backup at the position. Not Cole Strange, not Sidney So, not Layden Robinson. Or maybe it is one of those guys. I don't know. But they had the veteran out there at the left guard spot. He struggled just with the duo, the pair of him and Will Campbell. Garrett Bradbury, I don't think had as bad of a practice today as he did on day one, so that was kind of a positive note. But the right side also struggled, and they were excellent yesterday. Mike Onwenu, allowed a sack from Jonathan Allen in 11 on 11. Lots to fix there. Morgan Moses got beat by Dallas Turner in the 2-minute drill. So overall, the whole unit was pretty shaky today. They're going to have to figure it out. And all of these different combinations between the center and left guard position, and not really having Morgan Moses out there for most of the camp because of the workload management stuff, like, had they built enough chemistry? I'm really not sure at this point. But, you know, the right side was good yesterday, was not good today. The left side struggled both days. I think Bradbury was a little bit better today, but this is the glaring weakness of the team. They got plenty of good coaching between Josh McDaniels and Doug Marrone as the offensive line coach and the other two veterans that they have on the staff in the offensive line room. But they're young. They haven't figured out the right combination yet, it doesn't seem, and this is going to go up to week 1, figuring out who's ultimately going to start out there. I'd love to see Jared Wilson take some snaps at the center position once again, but they seem to have given up on that at least the last week and a half or so. So not out there today. Maybe there is a reason, and maybe they are going to give him a shot at center and let him study up until Saturday's game, but that's just speculation at this point. I'm really not sure. Second team O-line had Vidarian Lowe at left tackle, so he's back out there as the backup. Tyrese Robinson and City So platoon the left guard position. Right guard, you had Cole Strange and Marcus Bryant at the right tackle position. So Cole Strange in that backup unit. And that unit got involved in a skirmish, which, once again, Mike Vrabel immediately jumped into, found himself on the ground. Doesn't look like he was cut up or as bloodied coming out of this one, but Vrabel has his players back, once again, going out there and jumping right into the pile, trying to separate players. The receivers, again, did very well in one-on-ones and in 7-on-7s. Demario Douglas did get 2 catches in the 11-on-11 periods, did have a drop at one point, ran a route a little too early on a miscommunication with Drake Maye. Stephon Diggs, who was excellent in the 7-on-7s and 1-on-1 periods yesterday and a little bit in the 11-on-11s. He was pretty quiet in 11-on-11s. I think he had 3 catches yesterday. But today he did have a pretty good highlight play in 7-on-7s and a 15-yard touchdown pass from Drake Maye. Spun the ball to celebrate. Torched a couple DBs from Minnesota in 1-on-1s. So not worried about Diggs. It'll be interesting to see if he plays on Saturday. But he should be out there week 1. And hopefully he will get some playing time in one of the 2 remaining preseason games. Efton Chisholm continues to just shine out there. Did catch some passes from Drake Maye in the 1-on-1 periods, which is good. Now, still not really getting a shot with the starters. Maybe that will change in the preseason game, but did have 3 catches, which I think led the team once again, including a 20-yard touchdown pass that came from Josh Dobbs on an excellent route run by Efton Chisholm, and plenty of space for him to get open and catch the ball easily in the end zone there. And like I said, he just burned all the DBs he went up against in 1-on-1s and ended up having a leaping touchdown grab on a pass from Drake Maye in the 1-on-1 period. So you can't keep Efton Chisholm off this team at this point. In fact, this is a guy who might be battling for, the 4th wide receiver spot at some point. Maybe not right now, but he's been as good as anyone out there. He just hasn't had the chance to really play with the ones in the serious 11-on-11 periods. Receivers are going to go down. This is the NFL, and I think moving him up on the depth chart, particularly if Demario Douglas goes down, makes a lot of sense, but you can't keep him off the team at this point. Again, he's not the fastest, not the biggest, but he looks fast, and he looks bigger than he actually is out there. Very physical, excellent route runner, and incredible hands. Doesn't drop anything. So, Efton Chisholm, again, positive news coming out of today's practice. Kayshon Boutte, of course, had the Hail Mary catch in 11-on-11s, also had a touchdown in 7-on-7s. He jumped over 2 defenders at one point for a high point touchdown on one of those plays. So, Boutte continues to perform out there. Same with Javon Baker. Had a touchdown catch in red zone drills from Josh Dobbs. Did drop an open go ball at one point, but, I think his contributions on special teams has perhaps earned him a spot on this roster, and he has his ups and downs for sure when they do the 11-on-11s, but, the spectacular catches, the 50-50 balls that he's able to reel in, kind of overcompensates for any mistakes that he makes out there. Really, it's just maturity stuff for Javon Baker at this point, but Mike Vrabel loves the guy. He absolutely loves the guy, and like I've said many times, I think there is going to be a roster spot for Javon Baker and Efton Chisholm. I'm not sure there will be for Jalen Polk and Kendrick Bourne, who once again are not out there for practice, and I don't even think they even traveled to Minnesota. So some of the other catches, Hunter Henry had two catches, 2 touchdowns that came on the Maye alleged sacks. Austin Hooper had a touchdown reception. Antonio Gibson had 2 catches. Travion Henderson had a pretty good practice as well. 2 catches, 1 TD and 7-on-7s, and 1 7-yard touchdown run. So he continues to perform. Kyle Williams had a touchdown reception from Josh Dobbs, but he's continuing mainly to be out there with the backups. So Kyle Williams, I'm not sure is going to get a ton of playing time. He'll be on the roster, of course, but it's been kind of a quiet camp for him. But, a lot of potential with a receiver like that. There's just so many in that room, and, are you going to give Kyle Williams the advantage over Efton Chisholm at this point? I don't think you can. Efton Chisholm has been maybe the 3rd or 4th best receiver on the roster, even though he's out there with the backups throughout camp. So, this has never been an issue with Josh McDaniels. 5, 6 receivers, 7 receivers on the roster. Most of them are going to get playing time just because of matchups and the different week-to-week adjustments that McDaniels makes and keeping his receivers fresh. So there's going to be a carousel there at the receiver position. So I think plenty of playing time is going to go to all of these receivers, at least the ones that ultimately make the roster. The defense, as I said, struggled a lot more today now that Kevin O'Connell had some real tape coming out of the first practice. And J.J. McCarthy, who I was very high on a year ago, thought the Patriots should at least consider drafting him instead of Drake Maye. I'm glad they got Drake Maye, but he is the real deal. And yeah, he had a bad interception, kind of an up and down practice yesterday, but was spectacular today. 14 of 16 passing with 5 touchdown passes and 11-on-11s. And Justin Jefferson, you have to remember, is not out there right now. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. So, you have Jordan Addison, who is one of the better young receivers in the NFL. He beat Marcus Jones pretty easily. McCarthy was able to make some plays, some scramble drill type plays out there. So it was some good competition for the defense. This was really the first practice where you say, okay, the defense got beat. There were some practices where the offense perhaps outperformed the defense early on in training camp, but for the most part, it's been pretty competitive on both sides. Well, today's the first time the defense really got beat, and am I that worried about the defense? Not if Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis are back out there, both healthy. Then I'm not terribly worried about it. They got plenty of good pass rushers, plenty of depth at the defensive line, even more depth at the defensive back positions, assuming everyone's healthy. Kyle Duggar, of course, may be out there, may start, may not even make the team. But if Kyle Duggar is struggling to make the team, that's just a testament to some of the real talent that they have out there defensively. But you have one of the brightest coaching minds in the NFL, a defense that has a lot of new guys that are trying to build chemistry with one another, young players, rookies, in addition to some of the veterans that are on a new team. You're going to get torched in those situations. And J.J. McCarthy is also a pretty smart quarterback, so I'm not too worried, but I think Saturday's game will be a strong indication of the current status of this defense and if they're ready to go come week 1 in early September. But, not a great day for the defense as a whole. And J.J. McCarthy, I think, is going to have a pretty good season. And they went 14-3 last year with Sam Darnold. People were talking about Sam Darnold in the MVP conversation, and he ended up earning a starting job in Seattle because of it. I don't think Sam Darnold is that great of a quarterback. What worries me about Darnold is there is kind of like some raw Drake Maye abilities there, so I really hope Maye doesn't follow the same career path as him, but I don't know. I hopefully not, but Drake Maye, again, very encouraged with the practice that he had today, even with all of the pressure that he was under, very poised out there, and J.J. McCarthy is in the best quarterback situation in the entire NFL with a top-notch offensive line, maybe the best receiving unit with Justin Jefferson out there in the NFL. So he's in a bright situation. Thankfully, the Patriots won't see the Vikings this season. So that's some good news. They have a very easy schedule, but this is the kind of test you want to have at this point in time, and you don't want it all to be a success. And the defense has plenty of tape to learn from, some great competition, tested things a lot on this trip to Minnesota, and they're going to have one final test in Saturday's preseason game. So overall, today's practice was kind of what we expected heading into Minnesota. Yesterday, Patriots were a bit better than expected. So now you got a day and a half to look at the tape, get ready for Saturday's game, and see if the Patriots can learn from it. See if Mike Vrabel, Josh McDaniels can put their heads together. It is a preseason game, so they're going to run a very vanilla offense out there, but it's going to be an important game, and hopefully some of their players, including, Stephon Diggs, Morgan Moses, maybe Carlton Davis, get some playing time on Saturday. That would be really great to see, but, they are resting a lot of guys intermittently. Everyone's on a very different schedule, and hopefully that's all that happened today with Jared Wilson not out there practicing. Some other notes. Today's Mike Vrabel's 50th birthday. If that's important to you, I'd say, Kayshon Boutte had a good day with the Hail Mary. Travion Henderson had a good practice. Drake Maye, no turnovers. But the players that really struggled today were Will Campbell and Morgan Moses and Michael Onwenu on the offensive line, which you got to, especially Moses and Onwenu, you need a better performance than they gave today. But Vikings exposed the Patriots' offensive line and their defense today. Maye kept it together despite being under pressure. Travion Henderson is the real deal. Efton Chisholm continues to rise. Stephon Diggs, at least in the 7-on-7s and 1-on-1s, looks like Stephon Diggs up there. But the defense finally had a setback day, which they really haven't had all of training camp. So this preseason game looms on Saturday. We'll be here at PatsCast to cover it. Game starts at, I think, 1 o'clock Eastern. Kind of rare for a weekend preseason game, but will be a good opportunity for the Patriots in a tough road environment against a real Super Bowl contending team. And, see if, let's say they won the first practice, as some have said. Vikings certainly won today. Who's going to win day 3 in a real game environment where the quarterbacks get hit? You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be here at PatsCast to cover it. And if you like this video and you're watching on YouTube, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and we'll see you on Saturday.